All right, there we are on our live.
Randall just sent us a note saying that he cannot be with us this morning, so.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start. This is the September meeting of the Board of Creating the Future. We welcome everyone to this meeting and are so happy actually to have our group of board members as well as anyone who's participating with us via our Walking the Talk blog and our Twitter feed. Creating the Future envisions communities where people are living well, individually and collectively. We know that such a future is possible simply because it's not impossible. To accomplish that, our 10-year mission is to change the questions embedded in the day-to-day work of individuals and organizations, so everyone naturally brings out the best in each other and in our world. That's what it's all about. That's what we're here for, and we're glad that everyone's here. So why don't we start with a go-around of introductions? And there will be a few people joining us a bit late today, but we'll welcome them as they arrive. So, will you begin, Alex?
Sure. I'm Alex Budak, joining from Stockholm, Sweden.
Thank you.
I'm Justin Pollack, joining from Washington, D.C.
Perfect. Dimitri?
Hi, I'm Dimitri Petropoulos with Creating the Future, joining you guys from a very wet Tucson, Arizona today.
I am Hildegard, enjoying the wet as well.
I'm Candace Graham. Yep. My hair still hasn't dried.
Go figure. And my name is Gail Valeriot, and I'm a board member with Creating the Future in Guelph, Ontario, Canada. So we are expecting Linda Gertie from Vancouver and Mark Riffey from
Missoula,
Montana. Excellent.
And Linda may or may not join us. I haven't heard back from her, but she was tentative. So.
Okay. And Rebecca Hurd, who will be our documentarian today, anticipating that she will either join in or is following us via the Twitter feed. And if she is, oh, there she is. Da 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 da. Hi, Rebecca.
she's on mute.
You're on mute. Rebecca, you're on mute.
There we go. Let's start out with our traditional, customary way of beginning meetings, which is checking in with one another, especially about what has been awesome in the last 30 days. What has been inspiring you towards the mission and vision of Creating the Future? And anybody who starts will go around from you.
Gail, can I just, I want to make sure, because I may have jumped out of the room, I want to make sure that we shared the Twitter hashtag with folks, that anybody who's out there watching, we want your input, especially on all of the cool stuff that we're going to be talking about today. And so we want your input, and we want you to join every part of the meeting, including Gail's invitation to share what's been awesome. And please do so at the hashtag CTFuture. Again, that's CTFuture. In the Twitter stream, I see that we have got, going by hack of all trades, we have got Liam Barrington-Bush tweeting in with us. So it's really good to have you here, Liam.
Welcome.
Perfect.
Now you can go into awesome. I'm sorry, I just wanted to, I didn't know if I missed that or not.
No, you didn't. I absolutely overlooked it. Thanks.
Well, I'll start with an awesome then, going off of Liam attending on Twitter. It's so cool to see his name pop up there. We connected back in 2012 when he ran a campaign for my old social enterprise startup, Start Some Good. He was doing awesome work, and I just love, I had no idea he was coming tonight, so awesome when our little small world of change makers connects in various new parts of the world. So that's really exciting to me. And then my other awesome, at the risk of being part of the tourist board for Scandinavia, getting you guys to all come out and visit. Yesterday, had a great trip to this national park where, if that's not enough, you can literally take a public bus to the head of the trail. It's about an hour outside of Stockholm, and the bus just drops you off, and okay, ready to go hike. It's wonderful.
Wow.
That's awesome.
How is your weather, and what is it like right now?
It was beautiful. Today it was foggy. And according to my girlfriend's weather source within Sweden, once it becomes foggy, that means the seasons are changing. So I guess that means that the winter is coming. But for now, still nice.
Winter, the W word.
What happened to fall? Wait a second.
It's 9 months of winter, and then it gets sunny for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump in. So for me, my awesome is one of those roller coaster awesomes, which is for those of you who are aware of this region, that great mortgage behemoth called Freddie Mac had a foundation which was very heavy into funding children and community development, but particularly around the health and welfare of children. Well, they're, as a result of everything that happened here on the finance side, they're closing down the foundation, and they've transferred all of those funds to be now spent upon all of their past grantees to do some sustainability planning. And so there's this huge flurry in the community of all these people at the same time actively engaging in community work, a handful of which are capacity builders in the region. And so I've been in quite a few conversations that right now, the sort of the upside of the roller coaster is there's this incredible opportunity to be thinking about all of this planning in a parallel fashion across the region for all of these capacity builders. The downside is trying to open that door as widely as I see in my head to the rest of the community. But so my awesome is seeing an incredible opportunity and hoping that there can be some uptake on this. So, and one of the, if it plays out, at least I might be able to do it on a small scale if a couple of these organizations opt to engage.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Could be, yes.
Fingers and toes crossed for you, Justin, and for the organizations.
And creating the future.
Yeah.
It's the creating the future framework.
Wow.
Wow.
Beautiful.
And I might have to bring Rebecca down here so that she can ask questions.
Is that a segue to Rebecca?
No, we can't.
We can't hear.
We can't hear you, Rebecca. You're still somehow, and it doesn't show that you're on mute. It just looks like maybe there's something going on with your mic. I think that's actually.
While Rebecca works that out, maybe I'll do my awesome. I have two as well. One which is personal, spending the Labor Day weekend in Cape Cod and in particular in Provincetown, and had such a fantastic, marvelous, wonderful experience and holiday. Unexpectedly wonderful for lots of different reasons, but just so nice to be away and experiencing a whole different place in a whole different way. So that's one. And the second is more related to creating the future. And it's the time, you know, nobody ever really wants to go to the same meeting twice. And yet, having said that, again, taking the time to watch our meetings in replay, what's awesome for me is getting closer as I watch us working together and I listen to the things that we're saying and how we are with each other and the ideas that are coming forward. I'm absolutely getting clearer on what it means to not be a traditional organization. And so if you have a chance to look at the videos or the meetings that are archived, I think you'll be really impressed by what you see happening among us, which is something that, of course, when we get to a meeting, we've got an agenda in front of us and we're doing what we're doing and we're attending to each other. But there's very rare opportunities to really take a step back and see how things are changing. So I encourage you and invite you to do it because it really is quite awesome what's happening. And I'd love to talk about that further at some point.
It is really because our meetings are so intense in terms of discussion, it is really incredible to be able to watch that without having to think so hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to just be able to watch it as a whole and to observe. because when we're in the middle of it, we're observing and we're thinking and we're hashing through and we're thinking about what's next, and being attentive to each other. And I find it in the olden days when I was doing the minutes, going back over, and even now for some of the other stuff that I'm doing, going back over and just listening as an observer and watching is really, yeah, I agree with you. It's really powerful.
Yeah, there's great potential.
And I want to say hello to Jane Garthson, who is joining us today via Twitter.
Hi, Jane.
Jane. I'm going to go next. Awesome, first of all, is we've gotten easily, like about 12 feet of rain in the past hour and a half. I am just looking out in front of our office where there is just a lake in the eastbound lanes on Broadway. It's yeah, unreal. There's probably several things. I am in a state of reflection after my sabbatical, and realizing that, it just like most of us mere mortals, I'm beating myself up with everything I didn't accomplish, and have been for the past several days stepping back to be a little bit more forgiving of myself, to say that just because I didn't accomplish what I had set out thinking I was going to accomplish, what was accomplished was pretty awesome, and I'll be sharing that and blogging that in the next couple of days, because there were, it was just really, really wonderful, and it's good being back, and it's really nice to have given myself permission to have that little bit of reflection before diving into what's next. So that's awesome. Creating the Future-wise, Dimitri and I are leaving in 5 days, 3 days, 7 days, I don't know when, and going to northern Nevada, where I'm not sure if we're going to see Rebecca Hurd, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Christy McGill, one of our fellows, is arranging a week full of Creating the Future events, very much like the community conversations we did in your neck of the woods, Gail. Mm-hmm. We are doing community conversations. We are keynoting a conference. We are doing a workshop at United Way in Reno. We are having lots of individual conversations with individual groups. So that's awfully fun. And getting to work with Christy and with Deb Lesh-Griffin, and to see Joy Belonga and potentially Rebecca Hurd, all of which is just awesome. We've begged pretty much Rebecca to come down from Idaho, so that's why the potential is. Yeah, so that's the work, and then that's probably the most overwhelming. Awesome is awesome, not in a woohoo, but awesome in the awe of being in the middle of life and life being what it is. We have had about 2 weeks now where Dimitri and I and 2 other people have been pretty much entirely consumed with a friend whose 52-year-old husband walked into the hospital thinking that he had a touch of pneumonia and passed away 10 days later from acute myeloid leukemia. And so that's been a lot of our holding his wife's hand. She is sort of a second daughter to us. She was an intern when we were first moving out of boxes. When we started as a consulting firm, a turnaround firm actually. We haven't even changed. We started as a turnaround firm in '93, first moved there, and it has really sort of defined and redefined everything.
And she was the first director of the Diaper Bank.
One of the many.
Yeah, one of the many directors
of the Diaper Bank.
She wasn't the first, but she was there when the Diaper Bank
starting.
So
it has been quite a reminder of many things about what's important, and is coloring pretty much, I know, everything that the 2 of us have been doing, because we've been talking about it a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And so we will ask you to forgive us if A, we're a bit spacey, and B, more importantly, if we call any of you Kirsten, because we seem to have called Candace Kirsten for 2 weeks now, and really the only one on our minds. So,
Well, she's from the same part of the country.
Yes, Candace.
So I
it is.
figure that's, you know.
But yeah, so that's been our the awe of life, because it is awesome, but not in the way we normally do. No.
I have two that I want to add, obviously, to that. One is a personal one, and it involves bats. There is a migration of bats that comes to this part of the country, and they basically sleep under the bridges over our dry riverbeds,
They're not.
which today aren't dry. And at dusk, they come out and do a wonderful job of eating bugs and mosquitoes and all the things that bats are designed to do. But it is an absolutely awesome sight.
They come out by the thousands. When he says they come out by the thousands.
So about 2 weeks ago, about a week ago, I was walking along the river right at dusk, and it was a total serendipity. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't looking for it. And I crossed under the bridge, and all of a sudden there's this whirling swarm of these flying creatures that just lead in a giant trail, and it was never ending. They just kept coming and coming and coming. Unbelievable. And knowing in their life, they're blind. So, I'm standing under the bridge. They're within if that, and they're swarming all around me and going out, not running into anybody or anything, just doing their thing, and they find their way back to this bridge at night or in the morning to spend the day sleeping up in the bridge. And so that was pretty awesome. And my second awesome to that for creating the future is that I have been amazed at all of the work that the design crowd people have been doing in creating a new logo, or at least designs around the logo. And if any of you watching, and hello Lisa, by the way, Lisa is also online and watching from here. If any of you have not, please go and look at them, and please give me comments even beyond the voting, because I'd like to know what you think. This is feedback that goes back to the designer, and I'd like to, by the end of the week, to have it narrowed down to that has been awesome, just seeing the work that has happened, and also the feedback we've gotten so far. That is mine.
Rebecca, can we hear you now?
Can you?
Yes.
Hello. Is Candace? Did you go already?
I can go real quick. My awesome has been I had a lot of friends over the summer doing some international work in different parts of the world, and they've all come back to Tucson, so it's been nice to hear about their stories and reconnect with them because I haven't seen them since May. And then I'm just really excited. I go home in about 10 days, 11 days, and I haven't been back to Minnesota since May. So I'm looking forward to seeing my family, seeing my friends, and just drinking water. Except for this morning. Right here.
There's plenty of water. What are you talking about?
But no, I'm excited to go back. It'll be good. So.
Where in Minnesota is home for you?
Moorhead, Minnesota. So it's about 3.5 hours north of Minneapolis, right across the river from Fargo, North Dakota. So I used to tell people Fargo, and then they ask me like the movie. And they're like, no, but yes.
do you then like switch into Fargonian?
Absolutely. Thumbs up. So, but yeah.
Well, we wish you safe travels, Candace.
Thank you. Really good.
Okay, Rebecca.
Okay. My awesome was I had brunch yesterday with Sean and Deb Griffin in McCall, Idaho, sitting on our lake. And to have them in Idaho, and we were connecting kindred spirits who had not been connected before, but like these breadcrumbs had already started via whatever, and you know how everyone and everything's interconnected, so it's very powerful when you just bring everyone. I knew everyone, and another woman knew everyone, but then the other, so when we just brought them together, it was an awesome couple hours where you obviously could have kept talking for longer, and it was wonderful because we have a date to see each other again on Tuesday night. So just knowing that they're here in Idaho and getting to spend more time with them on Tuesday, it feels like it is a blessing. So, and just when you were all talking about the rain out the window, the fact that I know what that view is makes me so happy, because creating the future is the physical space of where we all track back to. That I know what that view is. I know what that Broadway street is I crossed to go eat at those restaurants to get my coffee, and all of the things we shared together in the physical sense gives me joy as well. And I'll be leaving this meeting to go to the 8th Community on Fire meeting out in the rural community, where we now have 83 people representing almost 60 organizations. And they can't always be at the meetings, but we're holding around 35 plus. And today we're at Department of Labor. 2 weeks ago we were at the police department, and people will be sharing today something that has changed in less than 14 days simply by coming together and being a part of something together.
Wow. Wow.
So.
I want her awesome.
Will you be documenting that and sharing that with us, because we want to know?
I've been documenting it, and then also I was asked, because I partner here with United Way, who's going through this transformation, but they asked me to speak to their Education Vision Council, which historically they are the ones on the high mountaintop, no offense, but they decide who gets the grants in the education bucket. So they meet a couple times a year. This was not when they decide that, but I was asked to come share, because people are hearing burblings about what the heck is going on in Caldwell. So I shared, and again we had someone from the Idaho Department State of Education wanting empirical data. He could understand my passion, and I gave him the story of one woman's life who's been changed, who is now legal guardian to her 3 siblings at 19, who no longer works the grave shift, who's getting GED free assistance to get her high school diploma, because she showed up in a space where we were co-locating resources, and she happened to be there to get her 3 siblings registered for school 3 weeks ago. I'm like, there's my empirical data. The story of one person right here. So, and he wanted to, and I invited. He's coming today to the meeting. He can come see, come be a part.
Yay!
That's amazing.
Oh, Rebecca.
And Rebecca, your earlier comment about this being home is exactly why we wanted this to be the convening space. Exactly why we wanted this to be when we're in Tucson, where we have immersion, is that it really creates a central place where people see as, you know, their home. And you're welcome back. So.
I'll be back.
Yay. Oh, Gail, can I do one more, which is more of an announcement than anything else?
Yep.
And it'll be very, very fast. And
cool.
That is that we are planning for the first time since 2011 to do a graduate seminar for fellows. So anybody who's watching, anybody who's out there, keep an eye peeled for a when is good for gathering together in our Creating the Future home and doing a graduate seminar. So, okay, I'm done.
Anything from Jane, Liam, or Lisa?
The only awesome that has been shared, Jane has said what a fabulous opportunity to demonstrate our approach, and that is to Justin. And Lisa is sharing that it is awesome to be back listening to us. It's been way too long, and it has been way too long. So
beautiful. Okay. Wow. Well, that's a nice way to start things. So lots of evidence of the power and potential of creating the future, and we have an agenda in front of us. First, I think it really, really bears saying, Rebecca and Deborah Beck, that I am in awe of you and the work that goes into creating minutes for these meetings, because it takes as long, if not longer, to take the minutes as it does to plan and execute the meetings. So thank you so much for your efforts in making that happen, because there are minutes for the August meeting, but I would never hesitate, or I would never venture to say that they're that great. But anyway, people do have those minutes, and they are in the consent agenda, and I'm hoping that there will be a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. And second?
Second.
Thank you. That was Justin. And are there any objections? Not seeing none, they are passed by consensus. We have 3 topics that we're going to be looking at this month. Well, 2 major topics and 1 brief check-in that are on this list. And those are the draft policy on workplace conditions for creating the future, and monitoring our performance in creating tools that will allow the board to monitor performance. So, and we want to have a brief check-in on the 990. Hildy, I know that's not going to take too long, but I know also...
I can do it in one sentence.
Okay, 1 sentence is we're ready to hear.
You'll get it soon.
Thank you. And that will be received by board members via the listserv, via email, via...
Yes.
Both. Okay. Good. So that's taken care of. And I know you had asked if we could please focus on the workplace conditions policy first, because Dimitri, you have to leave the meeting early.
Yeah, and I may try to log in and at least listen to the meeting and participate, but I have to leave the physical space shortly.
Okay. Okay, so let's begin with the draft policy on workplace conditions, and maybe just a bit of background to that, because we do want to take the time to look at this in a particular way. But were one of you going to speak to that?
I thought we were going to just start at the beginning of what we want it to make possible, what we want workplace conditions to be like. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the purpose of creating this is because now that we have employed people, we have staff who are employed by Creating the Future. We're at the point where we really do need to know what we want those conditions to look like, and it's kind of led us to the opportunity not only to talk about benefits in a specific concrete way, but also what kind of working conditions would bring out the best in everyone, either paid or unpaid. What kind of working conditions bring out the best in all of us? So I think that's the opening question as we consider how this organization sets itself up or establishes what we want as the highest potential for how people are treated as employees, as volunteers with Creating the Future.
I'd love to define that potential. What do we want to be the result of creating those conditions? And for the organization and for the employees, and then obviously for anyone who learns from us, but for the employees, and as you noted, Gail, and I love that, paid and unpaid. So staff, as in people who are doing the work. What do we want conditions to be like? What do we want to make possible through our working conditions for both the staff and the organization?
Yeah. And I think it bears just one last sort of preamble. When we started to talk about this at the operations table, we learned ourselves how easy it is to slide into talking about specific benefits that might be out there, and what kind of resources did we have to cover those, and what would we like them to be, and what's commonly given around, etc. And it dawned on us that unless we knew what the workplace conditions were that we were striving for, we wouldn't really have a strong sense of what benefits we might need to be thinking about that strengthened our volunteers and our employees. So that's really the intent of this conversation, and there is a small proposal to share with you, with board members, around what that might look like. But unless we know what it's in service to, it's going to be difficult to know what the right mix is.
So I'll start just with a universal policy, and it's almost a cliche, but I hope that this is at least a place where we can build from. And that's basically simply the idea makes possible that the sum is greater than the parts, which I think we all kind of agree to as something you generally work to, but I think that's at least something we can all probably agree towards. I won't presuppose, but and then from there we can keep and extend further. But I think at least as a starting point, we should look at it that we shouldn't just be however many individuals working kind of in our own little vacuums, but rather we're coming together, and by coming together in a good way, which we'll define, then we're able to do more than we otherwise would if you were just individual silos.
I'm going to add to that and say that if the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, that the parts are pretty damn awesome.
Say that again, Hildy?
That yes, we're talking about a whole, a sum of the parts, but that the parts are amazing. That it's not just about the whole being strong and amazing because of the bringing together, but that each of those individual parts is thriving as well. So each of us individually is thriving, and from that, bringing that together, the synergy that happens is something catalytic.
Okay.
I think part of what I took away from that, when we were talking about this and reflection on that, is that it is so easy to make this transactional, to talk about this is the transactional benefit, that you do X, you do Y. And this is really a philosophical position on relationship. And that's really what I took away from this is, we're talking about the relationship between each other as employees and creating the future as an organization, as a community with each other. Because that's really what it is. Just because someone is in here and is doing certain tasks, they're just part of the community and happen to be doing certain tasks as part of the community. But it's really on the meta level. When it gets down to the everyday, what happens on Friday, it may look very similar to a transactional item. But that just is a byproduct. It's not really what the
and it's one of many byproducts.
Yes,
it's not the only thing we're looking at, spending 2 hours deciding if a half hour accrued a month or a month.
So, I think coming off of what Alex was saying, well, there are two things. One is, I think, takes us to the blog post that you penned, Hildy, around kindness. I think there are some key values, and that we need to make sure that the policy is very intentional around creating a vibrant life for everyone who's involved. If we're talking about that's the mission or the vision of creating the future, then my participation, Candace's participation, Rebecca's participation should be creating a vibrant life for them, which I think goes to what Alex was saying. But the other thing that I was thinking, just in terms of framing some of this in our lingo, which is both inclusive and exclusive, I guess, to say that. But I want a policy that's framed at aligning an individual's potential with the potential for the organization, which then goes up to the potential of the community. So that as I think about this, and to give a tactile or a tactical example, if we're talking about how we evaluate someone's performance, that there's components of that are looking at how do we measure them achieving their own potential? How does that then manifest up into helping the organization attain its potential? And so thereby really defining that, each one of our roles has to be connected back to that. And so there's always the multiple layer.
And I love what you said, Justin, about that whatever our policies make possible should be, or has the opportunity to be, a vibrant life for everyone involved, because that doesn't say while you're at work. It says, I had done some scribbling on the policy that was sent out that talked about, if we are reaching for what's possible, then it's both during work and after work. But I love just that whole framing of a vibrant life, because that's, we only have one life.
Well, a very real example of that is compensation. Compensation is not just to have the person here for this period of time. It's about, I mean, it depends on how you think of it, but I think of it as you're making it possible for someone to live. The whole concept behind a living wage. Like, if you want to think about what you're doing, that it's what it's enabling someone to be able to do, with the one clear advantage being coming back and helping us unleash our potential as an organization.
It has been so long, Kent, since we have had you be part of our meetings, it is actually making me smile that between Rebecca and Justin and Kent and Lisa online, we have got 4 of our last year's October class here with us today.
Hi, Kent.
Another little bit of awesome here.
Yeah.
Yeah, along the lines of what you were saying, Justin, I think that there's, you talk about being able to live. Well, some of that is also understanding where people are at in their lives within the envelope of what they are comfortable with you knowing about their lives. And having watched our friend and her dealing with her spouse and her kids, and knowing about her life, and knowing that she's got hundreds and hundreds of friends who have offered support, but to know that sometimes you just have to go and do it. So that trying to overlay that into a workplace context where knowing what people are going through, knowing where they are at, and being able to offer whatever support is appropriate for that beyond the living wage compensation. It's compensation of another type.
What really is sticking out for me is the use of Dimitri, when you use the word transactional, and I think about workplaces and making life possible for people, and how sometimes we can slide so easily into the mindset or the belief or the behavior that is very transactional. I give you a wage and you do whatever I want you to do. And having seen other workplaces where we recognize the whole person and use the resources that we have to ensure that they're operating at their maximum potential, you have to really be conscious of that on an ongoing basis. You have to be self-conscious in a way, because we're so steeped in the transactional mentality. We are so steeped in the transactional mentalities in this culture. So I would like us to explore what the opposite of transactionality. Oh my God, Justin, we're creating more new words. What that is. What does it look like to be non-transactional in practice?
Caring for each other in relationship. I loved the fact that you said relationship. That it is about relationship. Gail, I was just scribbling because you know me, I work best when I'm writing. And here's what struck me. I know it's a lot of words. The actions we take and the policies we create are always aimed at creating a vibrant life and vibrant relationships for individuals and the organization in a spirit of community with shared core values and vision. And I'll do that again because it was a lot of words, but I basically shoved everything that we've been talking about here into that the actions we take and the policies we make, which is basically the workplace conditions that we create, are always aimed at creating a vibrant life and vibrant relationship for the individuals and the organization in a spirit of community around shared core values and vision.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like some of the really crappiest mission statements we've ever heard, but.
Well, I think I love that. I would want us to make a real clear. No, I would want us to make a plain language, everyday meaning for what we mean by vibrant, because sometimes that can be a word that doesn't actually mean anything, and I would love us to be that specific. What are the things that we will see and feel and hear that will tell us that we are doing the opposite of transacting with one another?
Great question.
I mean, that sounded like a great preamble for a policy, but now I want to, maybe we're kind of delving into what conditions.
Right.
I love that question. Love the question.
Justin, were you about to say something?
Well, I think it was somewhat along the lines of vibrant and thinking, I'm drawn back to sort of what I framed of the unleashing of potential. Because I think, I come from a perspective that this is a supportive relationship, particularly around employment, and that we look at it as we are all learning and developing. We're all working to increase the potential that we have in our life, as well as on the job, or even as a volunteer. And so there's an intentionality in thinking about unleashing potential that I really gravitate to, and I would like to be a part of that, because it creates the accountability of we develop one another.
Yeah.
We look at the coaching of one another as sort of a possible piece of this, or as an essential piece, not a possible.
I've been sitting here thinking for a bit around Dimitri's really good question around what's the opposite of transactional. So I still don't know exactly, but I could suggest one other model to at least keep in our heads as we think about it, which is basically the difference between arithmetic and geometric growth. So in other words, arithmetic being you keep adding the same amount to one another, so 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, geometric exponential growth. So when I think of transactional, I think of you're kind of constantly putting in the same amount and you're constantly growing. Think about just the steady growth of a company. Whereas true dynamic exponential growth means that I improve and I'm going towards what I'm passionate about. Gail's going towards what she's passionate about. Then as we're both growing, we multiply times each other, which creates an even larger number. So 3 × 3 being 9, and then 4 × 4 is 16, and so on. So you're getting bigger and bigger. So maybe that's helpful as kind of mathematical model to think about for what the opposite of transactional means.
Mm.
It's a great analogy.
I think I always think of the reflection of transactional is transformative. So the engagement is transformative. It makes change. Transactional just executes something. So in terms of sort of the language, and then what does it mean to transform an organization? And I think that there's something in that, and I think Alex, you hit it with the geometric growth, which is do we set this up so that the way we think about it is this is growth process. This is a transformative process. It's not that we're here to just sustain, but that there is a desire that things will constantly improve. So growth not necessarily meaning size, but more evolution and change over time. And so then what does that mean for us to engage in relationships where continual evolution and improvement and potential become the guiding priorities across the spectrum for our community, for our organization, for the individuals that are engaged? And this takes us all the way back to that, how do we shepherd resources and make them more valuable? It's the same thing. Everything that comes in contact, it's from a growth and evolution.
Yep.
Gail, I'm coming back to your question about if somebody walked into a meeting, our office, anything that we do, What will they see, feel, and hear? Which I'm playing with. They will hear asking rather than telling, caring, supporting, laughing.
Mm-hmm.
They will feel uplifted and not necessarily even know why. They will just know that the environment. Whenever I come into your office, I always feel better, and I can't explain what's going on, but I always feel better.
Yep. I think that also there are not necessarily, or we have unhitched the constraints around what it means to enrich one another. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I have an example. I worked in a place where
somebody needs to mute. You Dimitri?
Hi, Dimitri.
Yeah.
Okay now?
Yeah, he's getting ready to leave, so he put his phone on.
So I worked in a place where people who had very, very low incomes were on staff, and it became really obvious that there was one individual who had a huge network, not only a big family, but a huge network of people that they had the potential to influence and support. And they were forever scrambling to get themselves to the places they needed to be, and their kids to here, and their family and friends and network and neighbors, etc. But they were the go-to person. And so this organization decided to use of some of its resources by making a loan to this individual for a used car. And how that rippled out into not only the neighborhood, the community, but into the program and made the program itself more successful was astonishing. Over a very short period of time, things changed actually rather dramatically. And, you know, we were never sure. Should we tell people that we did that? Because it's not really traditional. It's not really something that could be supported in some spaces. But we can show the evidence of what has changed as a result of making that one unusual use of some of the resources available. And that's kind of, when I think about what it means to be on the opposite side of transactional, that's the kind of open thinking that I feel like we have the potential to step into.
Mm.
And it's also in the moment, it's situational, it's based on values, it's driven by a sense of knowing people as a whole person, not just as, you know, the employee that we have to expect X or Y whatever from. And when I think about the result of that, I mean, not only is that individual that I'm thinking about now a 20-plus year employee of the organization and a valued member of the staff, but also I think, you know, is regarded by people far and wide. Bye, Dimitri. See you. Drive carefully. Is also, you know, the evidence is there about the change in them personally because of that kind of support. So what do you?
And the thought that's occurring to me, Gail, is when you think about what it feels like at Onward Willow when you walk in, what are the words that you would use? Because I think that's a lot of what we're striving for in terms of that nurturing, caring, that you're not just a person when you're here for the 8 hours.
Mm-hmm. No, you're a member of the family. You feel like you're part of the family. And that the job is to create in everyone that sense, that awareness that they're much more than an employee or a client or a neighbor or a person with problems or a whatever. You are a member of this family, and you will behave accordingly, and you will be treated accordingly.
Ooh, you know what? Liam just posted, and I was a little bit distracted because he wanted to say something in over 140 characters, and so I had to log into the blog to approve the comment to get it on there. But he just posted something that's making me realize when you talk about member of the family, and he said his first thought is around organizing structures and the kinds of relationships, being conscious of creating equality. And when we're in a family, the families that we love being with are where mom and dad are not dictatorial, but everybody's sitting around the table sort of jabbing at each other, and everybody's enjoying each other. And I think that it really speaks to organizational structure, and I'm so grateful for this, Liam, because it really talks to that flattening of organizational structure. Maybe our tagline needs to not be change the world. Maybe it needs to be, you're not the boss of me.
Yeah, sometimes that works.
but it's occurring to me that there is, and it comes to something that I've been thinking a lot about, and you started to mention it, Gail, in terms of thinking about the fact that our board is moving in a direction of being very, very different with each other. We've asked so often, what does it mean to be a board, and what do we need a board for anyway? And I've been doing a lot of thinking about that over the summer. That has a lot to do with this whole sense of we have a board when we assume that there's a top-down boss, and what if we're all leaders? I mean, what does that look like when everybody feels like they are an equal leader in accomplishing a mission?
Yep.
That sense of equity, I think, is huge.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Kent just added, the respect. It's embedded, and it has deep, deep meaning. The word respect. That we see people for what strengths they bring, rather than what challenges or deficiencies or beliefs that we have about each other.
Yeah.
So the challenge, the next step then is to, it's not a challenge, it's an opportunity. The next step is to start to conceive what does that look like then in terms of a policy or a practice or an approach that we would want to take, especially related to I think it's too soon to rush into the benefits word,
no,
but
let's play with this for a while first. If we don't get to the specifics of the policy this month and we get to something next month, Gail, I think this discussion is way too important to rush to. We need a half day, blah, 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 blah. I want to share Liam's other observation, that we create conditions where people feel seen, felt, appreciated.
Yep.
I feel seen, where I feel understood, where I feel appreciated.
Yeah. Imagine what it would make possible if we just spent time, or in various spaces, staff, volunteers, etc., simply crafting approaches that made sure that those three things happened.
Mm.
And that we could measure them, we could count them, we could document them, we could videotape them, we could, stand in the public square and people would say, yep, that's what happens at Creating the Future.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Alex, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, those are, of course, hard to document in a policy. To me, what I see is a lot of empathy. The thing that stuck out most in your article, Hildy, was around the idea of people being burned out, and that for so much of it, we have the pressure the onus being put on the person that is burned out to say, hey, I'm burned out, as opposed to all of us taking collective responsibility. A quick anecdote from my life here: the manager I had in my first day, we were in a little conference room. He was drawing on the board. Before he started, he went, "Sorry, you're not colorblind, are you?" And on one hand, I was thinking, what? No, I mean, I'm not. But I mean, how wonderful is that? That instead of like taking away any reason that I should feel uncomfortable, feeling I have to stand up for myself, he took it upon himself to take responsibility to make sure that I was comfortable and therefore able to thrive. So it's shifting the burden of responsibility from the person that may have something to kind of collective responsibility that all of us are looking out for the well-being of others, which therefore enables lots of good.
Mm.
Yeah. That sense of mutual, that sense of we're all in this together, because truly that's what life is. And we lie when we say it's anything other than that. But we are all in this together.
Well, I think fundamentally at that is the concept of community.
Of what, I'm sorry?
Of community.
Yep.
I mean, it's embracing that, which is to say the workplace, if that's what we're going to call it, needs to be a community. And it needs to have all the aspects of what we consider to be a strong community. And again, it's the fractal world that we kind of live in, which is to say this is a microcosm of a community. We know that within a community, in order for people to meet their potential, to have vibrant lives, they have to be honored, respected, feel engaged, feel like they are I think to a lot of Liam's questions, equity is key. If something feels inequitable, you do not feel like you are part of the community by definition. So, then it doesn't, equity doesn't mean equal. And there's semantics around that and conceptual, but that's the idea of, and I think a lot of what I really appreciated in Liam's comment were, if equity is what needs to exist for us to be a thriving community at creating the future, then what does that mean for us? And again, I think it maps down the whole idea of we create community at every stage. That's what we're doing. So the policies create community.
Something that a piece of what you just said, not that the whole didn't strike me, and I wrote the entire thing down. If it feels inequitable, you don't feel part of the community. I think that there's two things that I wanted to note. One is feeling part of is very different than I work as, or I'm volunteering for, or I'm donating to. I think that there is a sense, and again, it's that there's an us. And it gets right back to how you started this conversation, Alex, that this is an us. That is stronger because of the deepest parts. But that we're part of, not giving to or getting from. That's really standing out for me.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's one more thought that occurred to me and made me laugh. Is that what we would feel is that this is a place that is building on our strength, and that identifies the strengths of everybody that walks in, that appreciates the interconnectedness of everyone, that is deeply embedded with a core of values, that is holding itself mutually accountable to each other and to a higher cause, and that is focusing on all of that within a core of, I don't know, we might call them like Pollyanna principles. It just occurred to me that the Pollyanna principles is just every single one of what we're talking about.
You just realized that?
Yeah, I'm a little slow. The rain, blame it on the rain.
So when you look at the sum total of these conditions that we've been discussing, in what ways might it lead us to be thinking about specific actions that we would want to take or want to be sure are in place? so that, I mean, for the purpose of just today's conversation, so that we could think about some of the strategies we would want to have in place, or some of the tools we would want to have in place, so that our staff are supported to nurtured, supported, appreciated, etc., to unleash their greatest potential.
I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but as you were talking, as sometimes happens in my brain, I came to the idea of compensation and reframing compensation, not as a financial piece, but how, if we frame compensation as the thing that people take away to feed their lives. So for some of us, part of it is a paycheck, but then for the volunteers, what is our compensation as volunteers? What is it that when we come and we engage, what is it that we walk away with that added value to our lives and rippled out? Because I think if we ask that question, one, it shifts the dynamics about how we think about compensation on a money standpoint, but it also forces us to think for ourselves, for me to sit down and to say, you know, what is my compensation? Why am I here? How, and goes back to, how is this helping me grow? How, and to Alex's, the exponential effect. When I come to this meeting, it shouldn't be that I'm just benefiting creating the future. I should be walking away with, you know, the benefit that I'm taking into my life. And so if we think about a way of encouraging people to be able to articulate that and to begin to define the relationship that people have to creating the future in those terms, it honors the fact that it's not about us. We're just a catalyst to make that possible for other people.
Okay, a couple of things are just like, okay, so you popped on what Gail said. It didn't answer her question. I'm popping on what you're saying. When we talk about compensation, we always, in the traditional world, separate out compensation from employee benefits. And there are different line items in there. But compensation is compensation. It is what do I receive for it? That was one thought that jumped out at me. Another is that we could ask that question about everything, about how do we hire, how do we evaluate, how do we compensate. And the thought that's occurring to me is a question that might come before that, because that gets us right into the weeds of the doing. And I'll share with you that this is a subject that is so easy to get into the weeds because we've all been in those weeds. The question that's popping for me is, if we want to be a place that is caring and supporting and equitable and family and respectful and empathetic and mutually caring and in community with each other, what will it take for people to feel this and for creating the future to be this? What would it take for us to be supportive and for people to feel supported? I am sensing that before we can go to the doing, that we need to be able to clearly define that relationship. And this is about defining relationship.
I think Kent actually answered that question before you even asked it. On the feed, he says, demonstrate interest in each person, ensure time to listen carefully, and respond with meaning.
Thank you for reading my mind, Mr. Shell.
Say it again.
Demonstrate interest in each person, ensure time to listen carefully, and respond with meaning.
This is like with the immersion course, when we were going through it, you then showed everything was done with intention and kind of revealed it after that. Oh, Hildy called me 2 weeks in advance, and I mean, it's already all there because it's what's happening all the time. She called me with intention, and honored me in that way. And then when we all came in the room together, how that all falled out. So it created a space where these 7 people who maybe didn't know each other before, or some did, just jumped right in. And it's all there. And when I finally went back and kind of read what I just experienced that day and the intention on how that day was built and the phone calls in advance, it then just even gave me more energy and more fuel that this is so well grounded in the most beautiful intentions, because I feel like I've never felt before.
So maybe the first thing that it takes is that when any issue comes up, we attend to it with mindfulness and intention to be this thing that we just described.
I'm leaving the silence because I know we're all thinking hard.
I think that it requires workplace practices, policies that are focused on how we be with each other rather than what we get from each other.
Well, I think that again, as we revisit common themes, much like we talked about the bylaws not being the bylaws were a process document, not a dictated document. I think similarly with the policies are about how, so the workplace policies are again framed from a policy perspective, or from a process perspective of what are the things that we need to ensure are being asked or being considered as we make these decisions, and what's the so and again I'm feeling like, okay, well, now we're at that point of what does a framework like that actually look like for then going from process to codification of a policy. I think that it frames up how we approach asking the questions about what policies need to be in place and what we need to be cognizant of and paying attention to.
Mm-hmm. I also think that one of the things that it requires is that we choose a pace of work that is actually conducive to assuring that these things are happening. Because we have a pretty big community, we have lots of different ways to engage people, and it behooves us to make sure that they are able to keep up with what we're doing, and we are able to keep up with what they're doing. And we've seen examples of this again and again and again. It's ubiquitous in the community benefit sector, especially among people who are leaders, who are completely at the end of their rope because we don't set a pace that is actually humane.
I'm reflecting on that from a really, really personal standpoint. As somebody who has founded many organizations, and I've thought about this a lot this past summer. I think that the tone of what happens in the sector comes from the passion of the leaders and their unreasonable expectations of themselves, and their I shouldn't say okay, maybe it's an unreasonable expectation. Their strong desire and to make something happen, their sense that they absolutely can make something happen, and that becomes the culture of all of the work. And so that's where we tend to see it as the negative of, oh, people are so overworked and burned out in this sector. I think looking at, just for myself personally, my own self-reflection of the balance that we're always trying to create here in this office between the fact that, you know, I think I don't need to sleep or eat or anything, that I just need to go for it because I see what's possible. That is not a sustainable pace for anybody. And so looking at, constantly coming back to that, I think maybe part of what it takes is time for reflection, time for that. I just wanted to sort of comment on that particular item just because I've been thinking about it a lot. You know, if this were about money and it was a slave driver, it would be something different. Can
you say that again, Hildy? That didn't come through clearly.
If this was about money and we were being slave drivers to our staff, it would be very, very different than when the goal is something bigger, where we're coming, where the leadership and the culture is coming from. Oh my God, we can accomplish this. We can do this. We just have to do more. Not if you would work harder, I would make more money.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Hildy, that's something I think about a lot as well, and that sort of concept of burning out and the stress you put on yourself to try to accomplish the most good. Because when you think about it, there's almost no end to the good that could be done. But that's why I go back to this idea of the exponential versus arithmetic. Because if you think about it, sort of like we talked about a lot of times with your crowdfunding campaign, that you think, okay, great, we need $5,000, got the $5,000, but it's actually not about the $5,000. It's about the fact that it's much better to have, sorry on the math, 100 people give $50 than it is to have one person give $5,000, because then that allows the exponential thing. So it's about creating the dynamic in the workplace that allows for that exponential growth. Going back to what Justin said around making sure that the way that we're thriving individually aligns with thriving as an organization.
Mm. Mm-hmm. I like that's a nice way to put that.
So Liam framed something, and I've been multitasking, so the reading and listening don't always work. But he asked a really nice question, which is, what is a policy offering that ongoing dialogue amongst those affected can't? And I think there's something really. Where I read that is that these policies are intended to hold the space, because we know. I mean, just as Hildy was saying, and we all experience, you can get sucked into the details. You can get sucked into the drama of whatever this thing is, and so the policies really allow us to come back and say, wait a second, we had a mechanism for the process, for asking these questions and for ensuring that we're aligning these conversations. And so I think with what Liam is, I think what policies do that dialogue can't is they provide the framework for having the dialogue. So the dialogue is intentional and focused. This there again, creating that space. I always have a gut response to what you were saying, Hildy, and I get it from the education side when teachers leave and they say, you don't pay me enough for this. I am not an advocate for underpaying people, but most people go into this knowing what they're making financially, and they still do it. And so the question is, when it comes down to you don't pay me enough, what it means is we actually missed all of the other benefit and compensation components that mattered to them. And we burned them out. They were not being replenished in the way that they needed to be able to come to the space the way that they had when they first stepped in the door.
Justin, finish the sentence.
Bingo.
The sentence is never, you don't pay me enough. The sentence is always, you don't pay me enough to put up with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah.
And so, you know, and I think, it's always that. And it's always a fundamental flaw. Now, you know, again, the compensation needs to, you know, there are equity issues around the compensation component. There's broader community issues. But yes, when somebody says that, they're telling you a much different story than a financial one.
That's huge. Huge.
I would love it if what we're doing started with that. Started with the determination of what are the things that need to be attended to in addition to someone's salary, pay, whatever. What are the things that need to be in place in order for them to have that invigorating experience, mindful of the likelihood that money will never be the thing that drives people. Hopefully not, but sometimes is.
It attracts them.
And in study after study after study after study, it's not what keeps them.
Well,
Yeah.
and yeah, all the psychological studies show that as soon as you put a monetary reward onto something, it loses its intrinsic motivation.
Mm-hmm.
You went from internal motivation to external motivation, which totally changes someone's dynamic.
Gail, I loved your question, and I would love to pursue it. And I would like to, in the interest of time, ask that we table item 2 for the subsequent meeting, and we'll continue with this conversation.
Anybody else want to weigh in? We had another topic on our list today, not to mention the fact that we should probably check in on our planning conversation. Anybody? We have about 15 or 20 minutes left.
Well, we have about a half an hour.
Yeah. Can we? Well, not including reflection.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's 28 minutes after the hour here. So any objections to continuing this piece so that we can leave the operations team with further details that they can dig into in working out this policy?
No objection.
Okay.
Alex is saying no objection.
Okay. Okay. That's great.
Thank you, guys. The question that you asked, Gail, was what are the things that need to be in place to be able to attend to the non-money parts of why people are doing the work, and I think that will set us up really, really beautifully for what we want to create in terms of policy. And I love that policy as holding space. I love that. So what needs to be in place so that people feel that all of these other pieces are attended to, and not the money part.
So it makes me think of how some of us approach the prospect and engagement and intake with potential partners that we're working with, which is the first conversation is honestly, what are the long-term and short-term objectives you're hoping for out of this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's at the sort of onboarding, it's not even the onboarding, it's the initial prospect component of saying, you know, redefining it not in terms of what you can give, but what is it that you want out of this, and is there a fit with this organization? Do your objectives of what you want align with our objectives? So then that raises that, and I think we've touched on a lot of them. We've touched on what creating the future's objectives are with regard to employment. I think the performance piece will come out of the other conversation, but the community piece, that's one of our key objectives. We create community.
Beautiful. I really wish Linda Gertie was here with us today, because this is the subject of the abundant not-for-profit. and all the work that they have been doing. And it would be so cool to have her insights. But absolutely, intrinsic motivation and figuring out what that is for each person, whether they're staff, volunteer, whatever, and how we can be on the journey together. Amazing.
Yeah, I'm adding a couple of comments in here. Carl has apologized that he can't make it at all. Kent asks, what would a completely fluid framework look like? Can we move away from mechanisms?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So if we are having the assumption that someone joins us from everywhere, from the interview process, the posting of a job, the job description, the interview process, the hiring process, the establishing expectations process, the evaluation process, the training process, and the compensation process and everything in between. If we make it clear that we create community, what does that take?
I keep coming back. It comes back to just having those two lists. The list of objectives of creating the future in terms of what we believe is the community we want to create and how we envision that. And then there's the individual's concept of what that is and how they mesh. And I think with the list that you just gave of all of those things, Hildy, that's what you keep coming back to. Is you say, for training and development, okay, creating the future would like to see this made possible. You indicated you wanted this to make possible. How do we mesh those two? Is it within our realm to mesh those two? Just like our community benefit planning. You know what? That's not something that's really under our umbrella. We want to pay attention to it and support you in that, but we don't, it's being very honest about that, of where the alignment is, where the points of contact, and where we can move needles in that. But to me, it's fundamentally just two foundational documents, one of which is the organizations, one of which is the individuals. And we are constantly in a process of sort of aligning, reconciling, responding to, what's happening at each of those levels. Or each of those stages that you identified.
And within the values. I think that there's the objective, and there's the I want to share with you guys a quick story. We were in the interview process for Candace's position. There was a candidate that we were on our way to realizing was not a fit, as we were wrapping up, we asked if that person had any additional questions. And he noted, I just have one question. How do you handle, so much thunder outside, how as an organization do you handle conflict? One of the things that we realized in his asking the question was that was clearly someplace that was his own history of where he was coming from. So that spoke interestingly that the only question that this person had of us was, how do you handle conflict? But it was so life-affirming to have Gail in that interview say, that's what we're all about. We use the processes that we use for everything to address when there's conflict. And it was just like, yeah. And so it's occurring to me that that's really what you're saying, Justin, is that in all of these situations, including what do we do in this conflict, that we're coming at it from the point of view of the organization's objectives, our core values, which we're asking somebody to buy into when they are hired, and the objectives of that individual.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's a key question if we're going to model this, that each of us as board members, documentarians, as,
Community members.
What's that? And community members.
Community members.
I think those of us who are now actively part of this conversation and holding up this bar is for us to go back and say, hey, if I were to list out what my long-term and short-term objectives are in terms of being engaged with creating the future, in terms of what it means for advancing what I want to see made possible for my life and my community, I think that'd be huge to hear from. I want to hear that from all of the board members, and I think that could actually shift, that could give all of us a better sense of what we need to be as a board.
I think that's such a good idea, Justin. I totally second that. I'd love for each of us to even bring that next week. So that's a way of making sure that we're all on the same page with our, what do you want to get individually, and make sure that that's creating a future, or creating the future's future, which is thriving.
Well, if we are to go by Gail's opening jab to this conversation, which is all people working in and around and for creating the future, paid or unpaid, that's us, kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's why I said it.
Yeah.
But what I really love about that is that it really does then speak to the expectation that people who join us come with the full knowledge that they are prepared to grow or explore as a result of being here or being part of what's going on here.
Somebody's listening to cartoons.
Hey guys, Dimitri.
Oh, it is.
Hildy, what, and Gail and Candace, I'm very cognizant of the real in the weeds benefit question around Candace and her taking time, and I want to ensure that if we have to talk about something that is related to that, we have a context in terms of how to think about that. Is there something we need to talk about right now in order to make sure we're enabling and making it possible for any potential anxiety or unknowns to be resolved to the degree that we can?
It's funny, the place that I was going to go, Justin, was I think that we're ready to apply this to a real life example, and so the thing that I'm smiling about is our process, our causality framework. That when we teach this, we say that when it's time to get to action, you'll know, because everybody will say, it's time we're talking about actions.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of smiling at that, but I'm really sensing that we have what we need right now to ask. Okay, so when it comes to the things that are on this policy, one of which is about paid time off, and one of which is about I think, well, let's just talk about paid time off and a health and wellness stipend. Let's pick one and see what applies here and see how we do.
Well, I think that the leave issue is the one that's really
the one that she's leaving?
right in front of us.
Yeah.
We want her to come back. So from that. Well, I have a very strong opinion on this in terms of how things can be made possible, and I think it reflects actually a lot of the other thinking that drives how we approach things, which is we are outcomes based. We are about, whether it comes to how we charge for an engagement, whether it comes to what we expect to see out of a conference or out of a board meeting, we're very clear about the most important thing here is what the expectations are of what's on the other side of it, what success looks like. My feeling has always been, and I know that there are labor standards that we have to be cognizant of, but in the event that somebody is a exempt employee, and for those of you outside of the borders of the United States, that basically means they are not clocked hourly. In terms of their compensation is not tied to number of hours. I honestly think this boils down to we create the expectation of what is to be, what the outcomes are we're expecting, and we monitor the achievement of the outcomes, and the way in which people utilize time is really, we honor them. I think we modeled this with you, Hildy, even though the money piece is not on there, but recognizing, you know, the sabbatical piece is part of what's necessary for you to be able to do and be in the space. I honestly think the same thing is true, and I actually know organizations. I know an HR firm that has done this, that has basically said we don't have paid leave. People take the time. People take the time they need to take for what they need to do personally, and what we monitor is the outcomes that we're achieving together.
Dimitri, you need to mute your phone or get off, please. Can you hear us?
There he goes.
There he goes. Okay. I love that, Justin.
So, yes, Justin, I love that too. The thing that I'm reminded of is Netflix has the policy, which there's no vacation time. Basically, you take vacation whenever you want. The thing I think is important to note, though, is that actually Netflix employees, on average, end up taking less vacation time than the national average. So what's the missing piece? The missing piece is culture. It's people that are worried that, okay, well, I could take a bunch of time, but then my manager will look down on me, and I won't get a promotion, and et cetera. So two pieces. One, of course, is to come up with a policy, but then also to make sure that the culture that we have actually reinforces and models what we want to be having as our values.
To that end, and I so love that framing of policy as a way of holding space. That is just like my brain's on fire with this question. How will our PTO, our paid time off policy, create the space for salaried employees to achieve their outcomes, achieve the organization's outcomes, and reflect our values?
We don't call it paid time off.
Mm-hmm.
We call it leave, or absence from the office.
Yeah, out of the office, right.
But we get rid of that terminology. They're not being paid to leave. They are leaving because they need that for there. So that's my first just semantics piece. The other thing that we need is we need a culture where there is active conversation about the outcomes that we are expecting collectively for the work that a person is responsible for. And we have to revisit that.
Yeah. Even the concept of paid time off actually is embedded in scarcity, isn't it? It's proof that they're actually working, or that they've done something. It's transactional, that you've done something in exchange for not being at work in the office.
Yeah, and we accumulate it, and I mean, it really is a thing.
Yeah.
Rather than our lives, and it's not honoring our lives.
Yeah, it almost sets up this false dichotomy between the life that you're forced to live in the office and then the life where you have the freedom. Yeah. Exactly.
And I'm thinking about if we were to really overlay that whole sense of community, that whole spirit of community, that you're part of, not giving your time to, but you are part of a community. When I'm in my neighborhood, I'm not thinking about my paid time off. I'm not thinking about, you know, this is I'm giving my 2 hours to being a neighbor this week, and not going to be a neighbor after that.
it starts with the belief that people are invested in the outcome and the impact, rather than the belief that people will do anything to get out of doing work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with the fact that that being here, paid or unpaid, is an invitation to be the best human being you can possibly be among other people who are striving to be the best human beings they can possibly be, and that it's an invitation, not a requirement.
Wow! Okay, I really like this.
I think, and I want to figure out how to address what Alex raised of people not taking leave that they need to take or should take for their own health. And so I think that this goes back to what Liam said, which is a policy that actually, what does a policy do that the conversation won't do? And the policy holds that space of saying, we need to consider whether you are taking the leave you need to take.
I think that comes back down to that thing that I was talking about in terms of caring for each other.
Yeah.
I think that there's a real piece in here about how we. I can't tell you how powerful it has been for me, and I can't speak to you and to Dimitri, but for me to know that we had set a policy here that we will look out for each other. And that we will look for signs in each other that we're struggling, that we're not doing well, and that we want to do better. And that has been so powerful for me. Where normally that's just in my nature, and this turns what happens to be in my nature, and I happen to be the one that's here right now, into this is how we be with each other, and this is the expectation. And I just speak it for myself.
If I was to add to that,
I also want to figure out a way.
I want to allow Dimitri Klein to get in here for a second.
Okay.
If I was to add to that,
honey,
overlay that okay.
It's so noisy.
Can you hear me now? No.
Yeah. Well,
let's do this. Okay. If I was to add to that, I would put the overlay of family on top of it. That if I'm to think about it, if I'm thinking about it transactionally, I don't think about what the ROI of my kids are. And I know we've talked about this before. So if you're thinking about the ROI of your employees, you're not thinking of them in the way you would think of family members, where you would nurture them according to what and this is something that Justin, you talked about before, you would nurture them according to what they have. What are their skill sets? What can they do? And you're not taking a position of, well, obviously you're not filling this role for me.
None of us can hear Dimitri. Can you hear him?
I can hear him perfectly.
Okay. How is that? Is he in the next room? Okay, you're going to have to tell us what he said then.
What he said is, and Dimitri, if you'll mute now.
Yeah.
There we go. What he said is that if we use this with the overlay of family, that when we come to the transactional versus the relational, that when we're looking at the ROI of our employees, would we look at the ROI of our kids, which, by the way, sucks. So if what we're looking at is how we treat each other, then we honor each other as family versus looking at, I'm not getting my investment back on you today.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that, Dimitri, and thank you for whatever magic it is that's allowing us to hear.
Well, and I think that actually reinforces sort of the thought that was in my head of there needs to be a feedback loop that's a feedback loop on the system. So that, if what we're talking about is leave, which is what we're, to me sounds like we're talking about personal health and the ability to engage actively and to be able to accomplish what you are contributing to the organization as well as what you are in your life and to be healthy in doing that. There needs to be a hook in there that says, if it's not working, where do we look to reconcile that? What do we need to look at organizationally? Again, what conversation might we need to have that looks outside of the organization to understand those pieces? But a key piece of it saying, it's classic if we get to the, so taking every second of your leave is sort of the, if we're talking slippery slopes, that's a slippery slope to you don't pay me enough to put up with this. And so people are sort of gaming the system to figure out how to take time away from work because they need to reclaim something somehow. So there just has to be a feedback of, were the objectives, were the expectations appropriate? And do those need to be adjusted? So it's not just the individual, it's also the organization that responds to it.
One of the things that has been overwhelming, first I'm loving this conversation, but one of the things that has been overwhelming in all of the various employee-related issues that have come up since hiring Candace is the reinforcement of Pollyanna Principle number 6, which is individuals will go where systems lead them, or as my brain usually says, systems fail before individuals fail. And what we consistently see is systems failure blamed on individuals. And so you're stealing, time from the company is such a deeply rooted cultural systemic failure on so many levels. That what are the systems we will use when it feels like something's not working is really a very, very different question than do we have a grievance board.
How do you deal with conflict?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Folks, I'm noticing that it's now 10 minutes. We have 10 minutes left, and I so hate to break this conversation up because there's just so much being said. And I'm so glad this is being recorded, and I'm going to encourage everybody to go back and listen to it again, because you will find things in here that you missed the first time that are going to make even better outcomes to this conversation.
I want to reinforce what Jane said earlier in the conversation, and I want to pull it up. But she tweeted an hour ago, every HR professional and manager should be listening to the workplace conditions discussion now here. Mm-hmm. This absolutely needs to be a 101. We should do flash classes on this.
Yeah. Well, the thing that is so important to me about what we've done is that
we set up a fail-safe because when the weather is really, really bad here, we tend to lose internet and lose everything. So the fail-safe is that Gail's the one that created this meeting. So the irony being that we seem to be okay and Gail's blipped out. I want to reiterate what Jane had said earlier on, which is that every HR professional manager should be listening to this conversation right now, and that this has been so instructional and so inspirational. I'm deeply moved by everything that we have created here, and I just want to share that.
Is that your reflection?
No, I'll have more reflection, but let's take a moment for reflection, and just to ask, and if you guys who are watching and tweeting and so deeply appreciative of all of the brilliant stuff that has been coming out of the tweet stream today, what is standing out from you standing out for you from our conversation today? And I will also definitely want reflection from you today as well.
I was thinking, Hildy, with your post on kindness that maps obviously to today's conversation, is that anyone who's a part of this, caring is continuous. It's not like a moment when somebody's suddenly in they've now blown up at their desk. And so often, as you noted in your post, we are afraid to ask for help because help is a sign of failure to some of us. And surely we shouldn't be given any assignment that's not entirely capable of handling all by myself. So, but if there's this constant, wonderful community going on, you're never going to get